Late one evening, Alex was scrolling through local auctions when something caught his attention. Storage Unit 217, no description, no photographs. The starting bid was only $20. For some reason, he couldn't stop looking at it. The next morning he drove to the storage facility on the edge of town. The place looked forgotten. Most of the metal doors were covered in rust and dust. Only a few people had come to the auction. None of them seemed interested. A few minutes later, Alex won the unit for $35. The manager handed him an old key and quickly walked away. Alex stepped toward the unit and unlocked the door. The metal shutter groaned as it slowly opened. Inside there wasn't much. An old wooden chair, a small suitcase, 3 cardboard boxes, and a table covered with a white sheet. Everything was covered in dust. It looked as if nobody had entered the place for years. Alex switched on his flashlight and started searching through the boxes. The first one contained old newspapers. The second was full of books. The third made him stop. It was filled with photographs. Every single picture showed the same man. At first, Alex didn't understand what was strange about them. Then he looked at the dates. The man looked exactly the same in every photograph. Not older, not younger. Exactly the same. A cold feeling ran through Alex's body. He spread the photographs across the table. The man appeared in different places, different cities, different years, yet he never changed. Sometimes he was standing on a street corner, sometimes sitting inside a cafe, sometimes watching from a distance. As if someone had been following him for decades, Alex opened the old suitcase. Inside was a notebook and a folded city map. The notebook contained nothing except dates and addresses, page after page, dates, addresses. Then he reached the final page. Only 4 words were written there. He never changes. Alex looked back at the photographs. The man's face seemed strangely familiar. Then he unfolded the map. One address had been circled in red. It was only 15 minutes away. Suddenly another photograph slipped from the pile and fell onto the floor. This one looked newer, much newer. It showed the same man standing beside a park bench, but he wasn't alone. Someone was sitting on the bench. Alex's hands slowly began to shake. The person in the photograph was him. He was wearing the same jacket he had on today. The picture had been taken yesterday. He turned the photograph over. A message was written on the back. If you're looking at this, he already knows your name. Alex slowly turned the photograph over again and stared at the message written in faded black ink. The warning seemed different now, and carried a meaning that had not existed only moments before. He carefully placed the photograph beside the notebook and looked again at the circled address. The red mark on the old map suddenly felt familiar and awakened a distant, forgotten memory. Alex leaned closer to the table and noticed another folded paper hidden beneath the map. The paper looked newer than everything else and had almost escaped his attention entirely. He unfolded it slowly and discovered a single handwritten sentence in the center of the page. The message simply said that the answers could only be found by remembering the park. Alex immediately looked back at the photograph, showing himself sitting on the old bench. The image no longer felt impossible, and instead seemed like a memory he had misplaced. He closed his eyes and suddenly remembered feeding birds beside the same empty park. The memory ended abruptly and left behind only a strange feeling of fear and confusion. Alex opened his eyes and realized he could not remember when that day had happened. The photograph appeared older than it should have been, and yet showed his present clothes. He picked up another image and discovered the same park appearing again in the background. The mysterious man stood beneath a tree and watched Alex from a short distance away. Every photograph suddenly seemed connected by one location and one repeating moment. Alex searched through the remaining images and found more photographs of the same park. Some pictures showed him arriving, while others showed him leaving completely alone. One photograph revealed him carrying the same old suitcase now resting on the floor. Another image showed him opening the storage unit, while the mysterious man observed silently. His hands began shaking as the terrible pattern slowly became impossible to deny anymore. The photographs did not predict the future, because they had already recorded the past. Alex looked around the storage unit and felt that he had once stood there before. The chair beside the wall suddenly seemed familiar and no longer belonged to a stranger. The dusty table appeared exactly where he remembered leaving it many years earlier. He stared at the suitcase and felt another forgotten memory pushing toward the surface. A brief image appeared in his mind, showing himself placing the photographs inside the box. Another memory showed him writing dates into the notebook with trembling hands. Alex stepped backward and realized the storage unit had not belonged to another person. The mysterious man from every photograph had been another version of himself all along. He picked up the final photograph and turned it toward the dim light entering the room. The picture showed the same storage unit standing open beneath a cloudy evening sky. A man stood in the doorway, and his face was hidden completely inside the darkness. Alex looked closer and suddenly recognized the jacket and shoes worn by the figure. The man inside the photograph was himself standing exactly where he stood now. He slowly turned the image over and discovered one final message on the back. The handwriting matched the notebook and looked exactly like his own writing. The message said that some memories disappear because they are not meant to return. Another sentence beneath it warned him never to visit the park again after tomorrow. Alex lowered the photograph and felt the entire room become colder than before. The air inside the storage unit seemed heavy and strangely aware of his presence. He looked again at the circled address and finally understood where he needed to go. The address did not belong to a stranger because it was the location of the old park. Alex carefully gathered the photographs and placed them back inside the worn suitcase. He closed the notebook and carried the map toward the open doorway of the storage unit. Before leaving, he looked back once more at the empty chair and the dusty table. Everything remained exactly as it had been and waited silently inside the darkness. Alex stepped outside and locked storage unit 217 without fully understanding why. In his pocket, the final photograph remained folded beside a date written for tomorrow.